everybody, Jack here, and once again, before we get started on today's episode, I want to give a few thank yous and shout outs to everybody who's been keeping the channel going. First of all, a big thank you to all of you for getting us up to 17,000 subscribers. Holy shit! Right, I can't swear before the beginning of a YouTube video or else I'll get demonetized. But yeah, we really appreciate you guys getting us up to 17,000 subscribers, and who knows, we might get up to 18,000 if you know what I mean. And as always, a big thank you to all of our sponsors on Patreon. If you guys want to go donate to our channel, just $1 or more will get you early access to all of our content as well as other special features. And I want to give a little bit of a local convention shout out to the people at Anime North. For those who don't know, Anime North is one of my favorite conventions. I've been over a 10-year veteran attending the con, but due to COVID-19, they've essentially been canceled for about 2 years now. Here's hoping for 2022. But if you guys want to go support the con, donate, and just check out their website for the hell of it, the link will be in the description down below. I love Anime North to death, and I love anime in general, so this episode goes out to you guys. Thank you all so much for watching, and enjoy the show. The following is a fan-based video review under fair use. InuYasha Movie 2, The Castle Beyond the Looking Glass is owned by Sunrise Entertainment, Viz Media, Ocean Studios, Toho Studios, and Rumiko Takahashi. Please support the official release. What's up? It's BigJackFilms here, and welcome back to another review, and yeah, I'm trying something new with the setup. Instead of just using my chair, I've decided to just sit on the couch bed. Anyway, oh, look what time it is on my watch that I do not have. It's anime! As you guys can tell, the last few years of episodes on this show have been dedicated to something anime related. So I figured I'd continue that tradition by continuing on with the adventures of my all-time favorite anime, InuYasha. I've stated before and I'll say it again, InuYasha is not only my favorite anime, but my favorite television series in general as one of the greatest fantasy franchises of all time. I've discussed the first 3 seasons as well as the first movie back in January, so check out that review, it was a lot of fun to put together. With the movie Affections Touching Across Time's box office success back in Christmas 2001 and season 3 and 4's ongoing ratings the following year, a sequel was inevitable for the film's distributors at Toho Studios. What followed was easily the most hyped of all the movies, and not to mention for fans being one of their personal favorites. But does the film still hold that recognition? Well, let's find out by taking a look at InuYasha Movie 2, The Castle Beyond the Looking Glass. Wow, that's a mouthful, but at least it's shorter than Affections Touching Across Time. Now, while the movie was released in between airings of episode 95 and 96 during the midway of season 4, it doesn't really fit the continuity of that timeline, so my best guess is that this movie takes place right after season 3's finale, after the vanishing point of the head villain of the series, Naraku, voiced by Paul Dobson, as our heroes are in hot pursuit of the fleeing demon. InuYasha, once again voiced by Richard Ian Cox, and his company finally have Naraku cornered, and in the first 10 minutes seem to have ultimately destroyed their enemy in one swift stroke.
That was easy.
With the evil defeated and Naraku, voiced once again by Kirby Morrow, freed of his wind tunnel, each start to go their separate ways, with Sango, voiced by Kelly Sheridan, yeah, the whole English cast is back for all the movies, going to find her younger brother Kohaku, who seems to be freed of Naraku's grasp. Moroku himself goes back to his old home with his companion Hachi, voiced by Terry Klassen, and InuYasha, Kagome, and Shippo go to gather the rest of the Shikon jewel shards. But unfortunately, this peace is not to last. Shortly afterwards, a full moon rises, and just keeps rising each night, bringing with it the promise of danger, as Naraku's incarnated sisters, Kagura and Kana, both voiced by Janice Jod, seemed free of Naraku's spirit, go in search of a mirror, where locked inside is the ruler of the eternal night and folklore legend Princess Kaguya, voiced by Nicole Oliver. To set her free, they must gather 5 items and drop them into the 5 lakes surrounding Mount Fuji. Setting her free means a worse danger than Naraku for InuYasha and the others, who are forced to face this new threat while things set in motion are not what they appear. Now, as a follow-up to the first film, which I thoroughly enjoyed as the best of the film series, looking back on the sequel, I gotta be honest, guys, and I'm gonna sound like a saint for saying this, but I found the second movie to, while still being a good flick overall, is the weakest of the 4 movies and honestly doesn't hold up as I remember it being.
Yeah, I know. Throw your hate at me, guys, but you have to hear me out on this one.
Okay, I'm not saying it's a bad movie, far from it. If anything, it's got great quality in animation, amazing action scenes, and the acting to some degree is some of the best the cast has to offer. But in terms of story and as a follow-up to the amazing expansion of the world from movie 1, it lacks to an astonishing degree, and I think both the hype and fan service overshadows its lesser values. But I do want to discuss my opinions and the positives first regarding the film and characters. Now, all the characters are on equal terms as they were in the first film. But of course the heart of the film comes from our 2 leads, and once again, InuYasha and Kagome are still fantastic heroes to follow, and their relationship continues to build to a much stronger degree. One of the biggest pluses to the film is that their characters, along with the rest of the cast, actually feel a tad more realistic and down-to-earth compared to the first film. What do I mean by that? Well, remember in my Dragon Ball Evolution review how I brought up that the best episodes of the series were mostly the filler where the group was just hanging out and being themselves, which allowed myself and the audience to feel more connected to them as being part of the journey? Well, the same applies to film too. The movie allows our 2 lovebirds to be more honest and open with one another, along with their end goals and future desires, which is one of the main themes of this movie. On top of that, we actually kind of get a major closure to one of the goals of the title character. Throughout the series, InuYasha's overall goal was to obtain the entire sacred jewel as a whole to become a full-fledged demon. And while we see teases of that form throughout the series prior in the Broken Fang arc in Season 2, the film brings it sort of full circle as we see what InuYasha could ultimately become, and it's not a pretty picture to be honest. But with the time that has passed and his connection with his friends alongside his love for Kagome grows, we see him finally throw in the towel on that goal and ultimately decide to be a half-demon for the sake of Kagome.
Who's asking for your opinion?
On the other side of the spectrum is Kagome's goal. Choosing to obviously be with InuYasha is a given, but there's moments in this movie we don't really know her chosen path or goals set in place. She does question her motives in the beginning of the movie after Naraku's defeat, but it doesn't really go anywhere, and through the rest of the movie, she keeps her wishes to herself, which does become a strength battling Princess Kaguya. There's a great scene midway through the film that's well animated and lit with the 2 at a campfire and looking up at a shooting star, and it shows how much the 2's relationships have grown since they first met. It really gives time for a breather and appreciate the journey between them thus far. Though in some instances, that relationship feels shoved into fan service qualities throughout the film, and the scene does blow it to some minor capacity. It's a moment where I swear to God you can hear the fangirl screaming in the theater on opening night. We'll get more into that later. But for now, the second update regards to connections between characters is with Sango and her brother Kohaku. The show has established that Naraku resurrected Kohaku and placed him under an evil spell, removing his memory and acting as his puppet to play emotional sadistic games with Sango. Now seen free of Naraku's grasp, he appears to still have lost his memory, which we assume was destroyed with Naraku himself. So Sango has more of a challenge to restore her little brother's memory, and their connection gets a chance to be closer in the movie. Though, like I said before, it can be a tad too close. I don't know what it is, and maybe it's a cultural thing, but the way these 2 interact seems a little inappropriate and a tad
well, Lannister-y. Seriously, what siblings act this close together?
Please, for the love of Buddha, do not look up Rule 34 regarding them, because I guarantee your reaction will look something like this. As Kaede would say, Ibibor.
Moving on, one of the more interesting plots is with Naraku and his now broken cursed hand that Naraku placed the wind tunnel upon. Without it, and his quest at an end going all the way back to his grandfather's time, he seems to have lost any purpose. But with one quest completed is another to obtain, and this movie gives him a chance to find something new in searching for a celestial maiden that would put a closure to his grandfather's legacy, which does tie in later to reconnect with his comrades in this new adventure.
How my hands have yearned for this.
He also brings along Hachi as his companion, as well as getting a cameo from the drunk Master Mushi. Once again, the late Kirby Burrow does a fantastic job in the role, as well as the entire cast giving their A-game regards to acting in this film. In fact, I'll come out and say it, the acting is not just on par with the first, but also adds a lot more improvements. And with that said, the rest of the characters are more reduced to comic relief or have only brief cameos, especially with the likes of Shippo and Miyoga. Hell, Kaede doesn't even make an appearance, and Sesshomaru isn't even present to the story outside of a brief shot in the beginning of the film. Even Kikyo isn't given that much to do in this one compared to the first, than being cover fire for the heroes or wandering the lands as she usually does. Though some of the better scenes in the movie has her come across a slaughtered village, as well as an intriguing encounter with Kagura, for which the dialogue is honestly really witty to enjoy.
Won't you accept it? It's what you seek, is it not?
You're very generous about this.
I am not like you.
Oddly enough, while we do have our main villain of the movie with Princess Kaguya, the driving force of antagonists in this film is actually Kagura.
And, to be honest, I don't see that as a bad thing. Kagura is one of the best developed villains in the story as a whole, and she's essentially the Catwoman or Asajj Ventress of the series. Hell, seeing her with a lightsaber actually sounds pretty kick-ass. Cosplayers get on that. But she does have the best depth of character in this movie now free of Naraku's grasp. She wants to ride the wind of the lands, but because of her seemingly mind-controlled Kana, she is forced into another quest to serve another master. And for her, that's a major blow emotionally, and it ends up biting her in the ass big time. Voice actress Janice Jod does a marvelous job as she does in the series, and it's nice to see these characters get their big screen debut.
For now, I have my last sacred object, and for that I am grateful.
Hell, I'll say all the voice actors, both English and Japanese, do a damn good job in this flick. But with that being said, let's talk about the villain of the series with the half-demon lord, Naraku.
While the two villainesses are the main soul of antagonists in this movie, this is a good time to discuss the head villain of the series, Naraku. While he does play a smaller role in this movie, Naraku is one of my all-time favorite villains in all media. His mindset and antagonistic character are some of the most well-written and intimidating bad guys I've ever seen on screen. While I love the likes of the Joker, Frieza, Palpatine when it comes to the high-ups of baddies, I'd say Naraku tops them all, both as a character and a strategic mastermind. He has many powers, abilities, and minions by his side, which always makes a villain a powerful match for our heroes, but what makes Naraku more dangerous and hated as a top villain in charge is his true motivations. He doesn't want to rule the world or become an all-powerful force, or even take revenge on his enemies. He was just a complete and utter sadist, using his abilities to destroy people's spirits and break them into submission by manipulating people's emotions. All for his own satisfaction in an almost sickly erotic pleasure. It's completely unnerving, uncomfortable, and straight up disturbing, making you despise him as a villain, just praying somebody kills him and end his evil reign. He's what makes a great villain for me. It's not total world conquest, it's just the pleasure in breaking and torturing people that makes a villain so despised for me, and Naraku is one of the best ever. Fuck the Dark Lord Sauron of Mordor. Naraku, man, now that's a definitive villain.
Try as you might, your attempts are in vain.
Now, I'll discuss his presence in the film later on in my cons, but for now let's move on to the film's main villain with Princess Kaguya, who is actually based on real historical Japanese folklore as well as the tale of the bamboo cutter during the Heian period, and has been adapted several times in Japanese media, especially in anime. There's a recent film about the tale as well as the second Sailor Moon movie using her as a Mr. Freeze-esque villain. Now, while the filmmakers and creator Rumiko Takahashi took liberties with the source material, they do manage to take the legends and tales and mold it into the mythology and world within the series. Though, to be fair, these elements really don't come into play later on, outside of Hojo's ancestor.
Hojo is my name, Akitoki Hojo.
Could he be an ancestor?
It's quite tasty and it's good for you. Please try it.
My health net. Now I'm positive he's an ancestor.
He'll show up later in the series, but back to Kaguya, her character has a lot of mystery to her, which when each layer is pulled shows her true intentions and abilities, ultimately becoming quite a foe for our heroes. It's also the first and only time that we have a head female villain in the lead role. It's also hinted that she might be a demon who absorbed the original princess, but it's kinda left vague for the movie. But her abilities are formidable, and much like Naraku, uses our hero's weaknesses and desires to her advantage. To be honest, she's not my favorite villain in the series, but she does have some staying power and adds a decent threat to the film's story.
It seems only humans such as yourself are enamored by the passage of time.
With the hype surrounding the sequel and the series holding high in the ratings in Japan, the film's budget was increased from the first film from $2.9 million to $3.2 million, and made over $7.5 million from its release in Japan on December 21st, 2002. While it made $3 million less than the first in the box office, and it also probably didn't help that much like the first film, it came out during the release of the second Lord of the Rings film, The Two Towers, the hype was still strong, and with the increased budget came higher quality animation. And with it, a change in quality, which I'm very 50-50 on. Unlike the grainy, hand-done animation cells created frame by frame by several artists, this film was the first in the series to upgrade its quality to a cleaner and digital framing of animation. Now granted, they still use the frame-by-frame drawings, but the digital differences make the tone of the series from this point forward more, colorful and kid-friendly. Now, color is no problem, but the big issue is less grittiness and grain in the animation, which added so much more of the adult tone to the series, in terms of lighting and visuals. The first 3 seasons and movie 1 kept that same tone, which made the entire story more engaging and mature when watching it. This movie and moving forward come later parts of season 4, this quality change feels a little cheaper and takes away a lot of the dark tones and colors that the show was grounded in, and it will be sadly missed from my perspective. While the stories are still fantastic as it goes along in the later films, I'd still state that the first film had the best animation from the movies. But aside from that little bias rant I have, the animation in movie 2 has some great visuals to go along with it. The film is much more faster and action-oriented than the first, and to that end it delivers all the fights and thrills you'd want from a sequel. From the opening battle, to the fight with Kagura, and elements of the climax, the animation and the animators at Sunrise Studios did a fantastic job delivering the goods needed on the screen. Wanda returns to score The Castle Beyond the Looking Glass and has stayed on the series since its beginnings, even now with Yashahime. While it recycles a lot of themes from the show and the previous film, he does give movie 2 its own flavor and style. While I miss the upgraded, almost samurai tone of the first film with some of the instruments, this score still has some fantastic new themes and upgrades from the series. Kaguya's theme is not only full of magic and mystery, but also can be quite haunting when the character is provoked, almost acting like a theme for a character like Jafar or the Wicked Witch.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog too.
The movie also does provide an ending track with the song Yura Yura, performed by Every Little Thing. While not my favorite ending song in the movies, that credit still goes to Ayumi Hamazaki's No More Words. Every Little Things track does add a sense of a brighter spirit after such a massive adventure, and even adds a sense of continuation that Kagome provides in her final lines in the film.
The shooting star granted at least part of my wish. Princess Kaguya of the ancient legend returned to the moon. Our journey, though, is far from over.
It's a decent track all things considered, and the band would later provide the intro for the later part of season 4 and 5, with the song Grip, which is one of my favorites in the series, acting like a holiday-themed intro. However, Every Little Thing provided another song to the movie at the midway point during the campfire scene titled Ai no Uta, which translates to Song of Love. While I don't know the reason for it other than I guess the band making some extra content for the movie, it's a nice addition to the scene in its own terms. But going back to Wada's score, he also adds a new piece, which is honestly a tragic but beautiful piece titled The Prayer Wish. While it plays into the scene I'll discuss later, without spoilers, provides a sense of confessional romance to the characters, making certain scenes in some regard have some redeeming qualities, and without the track, I don't think that scene would have had the staying power as it has with the fans. So props to Wada for making the scene work in music alone. But one of the best things to the score is some of the updated themes for characters with the increased orchestra. Naraku's theme in this movie is pushed to a massive degree of power and disturbance, making his presence so much grander and full of utter poison, hate, and horror. Not to mention, Hachi's theme, which I adore, is so simple and fun for such a comedic character. While sounding like your generic theme for an Asian culture, there's just something really charming about it. Now, Kagura's theme is upgraded and... I'm sorry, this is something I've always questioned, but... is it me, or does her music sound like the theme to Mission Impossible? It's extremely similar. It's just total spy mode. Half the time I keep expecting Tom Cruise to pop in disguised as the Last Samurai and revealing himself as Ethan Hunt. But I digress, because I really dig Kagura's theme in this series. And it's a nice updated version of the track.
Although, to be fair, Agent 00 Kagura sounds kinda badass. I'd watch the shit out of that.
This is the end.
But with all I have to say in the film's positives, looking back on it and regarding the films and series as a whole, I can't help but now finally discuss the flaws in this one and why the movie is the weakest of the four. While it has its moments, it lacks a lot of the franchise's other qualities in the story and world building department. So from this point forward, I gotta get into spoilers.
Hey! Snape kills Dumbledore.
First and foremost, the tale of Princess Kaguya, while connecting to many of the characters in an almost puzzle piece mentality where once the pieces come into place, feels kind of forced and contrived when it comes to character connections. Plus, outside of the character of Hojo's ancestor returning to the series, Kaguya's presence never really has any repercussions or prevalences to the storyline and world building, coming off as a major detour, which also makes her character not just pointless, but one of the weaker villains of the series. It also doesn't help when it comes to Naraku. While it feels like an immediate follow-up to the season 3 finale, his death eventually becomes an emotionless run when he returns at the end of the film. Though to be fair, it's one of the most disturbing moments in the series, and I swear at this point forward, Naraku comes off more as John Carpenter's The Thing.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
Now, his plan was to fake his death to such a degree to not only leave our heroes vulnerable, but also use them to awaken Kaguya to absorb her into his body to become immortal. Had he succeeded leaving the film on an Empire Strikes Back-esque downer, it would have been more impactful later in the show. But the biggest mistake the writers make is, he fails! Making Naraku's presence in the film and the movie as a whole a complete waste of time. Naraku and his minions disappear and leave our heroes back to where they were at the end of season 3. Seriously, what the absolute hell? And fans say this is the best of the series? That's ridiculous! Given the hype at the time, had I seen it in theaters in Japan in 2002, I would have been left extremely disappointed.
But that's not why fans love this movie, is it? It's time I throw in my 2 cents. In a minority opinion, let's talk about the scene.
Okay, girls, this is it. The kiss.
Arguably, the highlight of the movie for the fans of the series is the ending scene where InuYasha and Kagome finally confess their love one another and kiss. And I freaking hate this scene.
Yeah, come on at me, y'all. Let me explain in full detail why this scene does not work.
Now, before you all piss the floor like a bad dog, hear me out. No, it's not because I'm on Team Kikyo. No, it's not because I think this love story sucks. In fact, far from it. No, it's not because it's well animated and shot. In fact, its build-up is the most impressive thing. To summarize, the film has hinted InuYasha's true intentions to become a full demon, and when Kaguya fulfills his wish, we see the beast within emerge, and it's quite haunting and tragic for the character to reach this low, becoming much more violent and dangerous than his previous transformations. So Kagome, being the only voice who can tame him, reaches out to him in a tight embrace, crying in agony for him to come back to the light. With a mix of Wada's music and Monika's story acting her goddamn heart out, this part of the scene is masterful and emotionally powerful.
InuYasha, don't do it! Please stop!
Seriously, this build-up alone almost had me teary-eyed.
InuYasha! I'm begging you, please don't change!
I even like how Kagome straight up confesses her love to him in a desperate attempt to set him free, along with some amazing visuals of the character and a grace of beauty from InuYasha's perspective.
I love you as a half-demon, InuYasha! I love you. I love you as a half-demon.
And with Kaguya's control, it becomes so much harder for the character to break free from his beastly attack. Even to the point he grips Kagome's shoulders, drawing blood. Jesus Christ, how dramatic can you get? This is pretty hard to watch.
And all of this works wonders. But then this happens.
InuYasha, you want to stay with me, don't you?
Kagome.
Given the context of the movie as a whole and the eventual end of the series later on, this kiss wasn't earned. It's too soon to happen with these two, and it feels completely and utterly forced. And that's due to the fact that while yes, the two love each other, we saw zero desires of interest in the two regarding a physical relationship as of yet. It was much more of a spiritual one without any hint of sensuality due to the characters themselves, as well as probably censorship practices at the time not allowing too much steam out of the pot per se.
Hell, when they were designing Kagome early on, they were specifically ordered not to make her skirt too short to avoid any adult-related fan service.
This was the first and thankfully only rare few times in the series that the studio seemed to have caved into fan service, and that's the film's biggest flaw. The entire movie is a fan service story with no real consequence and follow-up. This kiss was, from my perspective, pure pressure from the studio to please fans, since the shipping and fan art in the early days of the internet had begun to really take effect. While the movie was released on DVD in 2005, long after the original series wrapped, this was still a factor for North American audiences. Hell, the DVD itself was heavily marketed in North America, even being promoted with portable DVD players, which was a huge thing at the time. Remember those?
Which brings me to the final nail in the coffin regarding the quality control of this movie.
Like I said, the build-up before the moment is great, and honestly, had this film ended prior to it and Naraku absorbing Kaguya's immortality, this film would have been a stellar cliffhanger for the series. But would you believe that the build-up itself is also ruined?
What are you rambling on about?
Probably not if you bought the Blu-ray release. Okay, let me explain. The DVD version is what I'm using for this particular review. It's the one I fondly remember picking up at the same record store that I bought film 1, and it's still a great DVD with fantastic bonus features and an awesome countdown TV special during the film's hype in 2002, providing a ton of behind-the-scenes material. But watching the Blu-ray version, I noticed some major issues regarding that scene and its build-up, namely the fact that they re-recorded the emotional dialogue for the scene.
InuYasha! I'm begging you, please don't change! InuYasha! I'm begging you, please don't change!
Whether or not Monika's story returned to re-record it or they used alternate takes, the build-up is ruined with these almost George Lucas-esque alterations.
InuYasha, don't do it! Please stop! InuYasha, don't do it! Please stop!
The DVD version had Kagome in a desperate, sad, and dramatic state to free the man she loves, making this scene all the more heartbreaking.
I love you as a half-demon, InuYasha!
But come the Blu-ray, for whatever bullshit reason, they use takes that suck out all the emotion from the characters' attempts, making the scene so much more of a failure and lacking any emotional depth.
I love you as a half-demon, InuYasha!
You done fucked it up.
What the hell happened? This scene was fine as it was. Why change it to a tone so dull and lifeless? It ruins the only good moment, which was not earned, even more embarrassing to look at.
Idiot.
So yeah, if you're gonna watch this film, I'd say put your money on the DVD version because it gives you the full emotional experience and stay clear of the Blu-rays. But with all that being said, this to me is still the weakest of the InuYasha film series.
Regardless of your nostalgia and hype at the time and the fan service that blinds many people to it, The Castle Beyond the Looking Glass, in retrospective, is one of the weaker entries of the series. While it has its great moments and characters to hold on to, the story is weak, it lacks the world-building scope and animation quality of film 1, the villains are retroactively pointless, especially Kaguya herself, hell, the title fortress itself in terms of design lacks any interest, and the fan service with the characters feels forced and unearned. While it is still a passable film to watch in terms of action and fun, if you're looking for more world building to the mythology, you're gonna be sadly disappointed with this one. And for first timers, I'd say stick to movie 1 to get you started. Hell, this movie honestly feels more like a TV movie than a theatrical feature. For the longest time, I felt the fourth film, Fire on a Mystic Island, was the weakest, and we'll talk about that one down the road, but that had more interesting storylines than this one, which unfortunately leaves movie 2 at a 6.2 out of 10. While it has its moments and some will find enjoyment out of it, and I still do to some degree, my opinion states that this is sadly a disappointing retrospective and the weakest film of the InuYasha movies.
Yeah, sorry to break it to you folks, but InuYasha Movie 2 isn't the masterpiece I remember it being. And that scene in particular just didn't do it for me. But of course, that's my 2 cents. Now I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on InuYasha Movie 2? Do you think it still holds up and expands the mythology? Or do you think it's pointless fan service? Let me know in the comment section below. So until the next video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. This is BigJackFilms, signing off.
the powers of darkness. I command you forth to bring me a worthy ally. Bring forth the half-demon Spider Lord out of the depths of hell from the feudal era. Who dares awaken me from the dead? Am I not allowed to rest in pain like everyone else in the depths of the netherworld? And what of our own friends, Lord Naraku? Well. If it isn't my lord and master, Lord, forgive my rudeness. I do not know of your return. There is no forgiveness, no mercy from me. You should know, Naraku, for it was I who awakened the demon to possess your body eons ago. That you desired so much without hesitation. All for your pitiful obsession for a witless priestess. I gifted you the power to conquer worlds, and you used it for such a pitiful possession of a useless trinket and the lust for a mere mortal woman! But perhaps you may have another chance to obtain such desires, my old friend. What task shall you have me bid, Master? More or less information for you to do as you wish. Whatever it is, it must be of great importance. You are weary of the way he faced upon the Great War 15 years ago. So, he's alive then? Are you still worried about that weak-minded boy? Something new has come to light. Something that both of us have failed to see. What if I were to tell you that the warrior was the master of and first to fall for the love of the priestess? Nay, that's not possible. I would have been aware of his presence. His power seemed to have clouded your vision, my friend. For he had entered your world before Keeling came into the possession of the so-called jewel. Then before your conception. The boy had my curiosity at the time of the war. Now, he has my full attention.